I have to say Mr. Dolan when I talk about him because I
Because
can't.
he's your
It's
professor.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable when I hear people call him Tom. I'm like, oh. Wait, everybody breathe.
Yeah. Hello everyone, thanks for visiting my channel, and today I'm very pleased to have two friends, Dr. Tom and Dr. Herman. I'm gonna have them introduce themselves and then we're gonna talk about today's topic and we're gonna go from there. So Tom, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, I guess I'm here because I taught philosophy for more than 50 years, I guess.
Wow.
And so my background is I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in philosophy from Marquette University. I started my academic career teaching at Edgewood College in Madison, and then I came to Chicago, got married, taught at Loyola for several years, and then I went to DePaul as a professional staff member, and I stayed there 46 years. But during that time, during those years, I taught philosophy as an adjunct teacher, part-time teacher, at many schools in the Chicago area, but particularly at Oakland Community College. I was there for some 35 years, and I guess I would say that teaching was really my first love, and I always continued that, even though my day job was at DePaul in an advising position rather than teaching.
And did you teach philosophy in general, or did you focus on any specific topics?
Well, really, we had a number of courses, particularly at the junior college. The standard courses were Introduction to Philosophy, Ethics. The course that became most popular over the years was World Religions. Oakland didn't have a religion department, so it was a course that was assigned to the philosophy department. And I remember seeing how every year there were more sections being offered of that class, and I think largely because of the history we're living in, and
religion is a very hot topic. So
hot topic, very much of interest.
Right. Yeah.
So
That's very much related to today's discussion too.
and in fact, one of my students was Herman.
Dr.
Yes,
Herman,
yes.
so now we want to hear about you.
So I'm Dr. Herman, but my brand name is Dr. HermanSJr. So I'm what's called a global change agent. So I teach different entities on two things: highly complex problem solving, and number one, novel idea generation. And I use two tools. One is the system of interconnectivity, and the second is psychological strategy. So the targets that I train are typically multi-million-dollar companies, police, universities, doctors, engineers, underprivileged groups, many different types of people across different countries, industries, and even languages. They don't have to speak English. So that's what I do, and I've been very lucky. I was a student with Mr. Dolan. I can't call him Tom, but Mr. Dolan. I was a student in Oakland College.
Which courses did you take with him?
It was World Religions.
Nice.
Yeah, World Religions. So it was a great course. Yeah.
How many religions did it cover? That course?
Oh God.
As much as we could.
Yeah, it's many different ones. Yeah, many
And
different ones.
how many?
Oh, how many?
Because some people might not know how many religions there are. Right?
Oh God.
It might be
Religions in
surprising.
the world. I have no idea.
Well,
how many
we
did in the class.
In a way, it's kind of a standard curriculum for that kind of a course. You hit the major religions, what some would call the major ones, you know. So, and generally we did it chronologically. So we started with Hinduism, and then Buddhism, and Then we continued
Christianity.
Judaism, Christianity, Islam. Yeah.
So yeah, it was a great class.
Nice. Yeah. And that's how you
wish he taught
remained.
more.
And then you remained friends after that.
Yes.
Yes.
We remained friends ever since. Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
So, obviously, you both have a very rich experience, and we could go hours and hours. There are so many topics to discuss, but I
Yes.
think today, one question that I want to bring up and maybe discuss it a little bit. I know we won't find any solutions because it's a very tough question. So the topic is religions and world peace. The relationship between the religions in general, and world peace. And in my opinion, we're just going to start by maybe a proposition. In my opinion, there could be three possibilities that maybe you wanna think about. Either religions are a reason for conflict. Religions cause instability, and the world would be better off without religions. That's one proposition. The second is, no, religion actually make things better. It could make things better. Maybe if there were no religions at all, maybe the world wouldn't be, the world is not in a good shape anyway, but maybe religions did some positive change. And the third possibility is, maybe religion is just neutral, and human beings, they make conflicts, they make war, and they just use religion, or if religion wasn't there, they would use anything else to do what they do, whether it's peace or war. So I think I want to start with your thoughts on that. Is religion and peace compatible or opposites?
I think when you look at history, it's a mixed record.
Right.
I think when religion lives up to be what it should be, it's a message of peace. I don't know if this would help us to analyze, but I have a story
Sure.
to tell you.
Yeah, please.
A true story. And so I was teaching at Oakton for some 35 years or so. And round about the turn of the century, so one day I asked a question in class. I said, how many of you think that love conquers all? And I raised my hand, and the whole class raised their hand, and they were very enthusiastic. And I thought, well, that was interesting. And I decided to ask that question of all of my classes. And each semester, I would introduce, most of my classes, sections were world religions, but I taught other classes like ethics. And for several years, all the students were very enthusiastic. I would get 100% or close to 100% affirmation. Love conquers all. But then, every year, so 2004, 2005, 2006, I noticed that there were dissenters, people who said they didn't affirm.
Is it the same people or new students every time?
Well, new students.
Okay.
And my students were a nice mix of young people, mostly young people, but I had some returning students and even some older people, retirees, who would come to my classes. And so it was a nice representation, I think, and but predominantly young people. Oakton is a community college, so they come out of high school and do their first 2 years after that. Well, by the time I was aiming for retirement at 2014. By the time I got to 2010, a minority of the people the students were affirming.
It's a very interesting
I remember
observation.
the last class I taught, and I asked them, who believes that love conquers all? I raised my hand. Nothing.
Really?
Nothing.
No one raised their hand?
And then I think I got too late.
Let's agree with the teacher.
Maybe they wanted A's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever. Now, I don't know if that helps us in our,
It's a very interesting
it's very interesting.
Yeah.
And maybe Herman could better explain
Yeah.
what was going on.
But also, if I may comment, 10 years is not a long time.
Correct.
And
yeah.
If you look at
10,
the
12,
context of
14,
history,
15 years.
even 15 is nothing.
Yeah.
So for people to change their views that much
Yeah.
within such a short period of time
Yeah.
is very telling.
Obviously, it's not the same people, but it's
Yeah,
it's,
but it's a
yeah.
sample of society.
It's,
Yeah.
it's the culture. What has happened? What happened? And my thought is that it was during this time that young people began to understand that they were not going to have the same affluence that their parents were going to have, and of course in the geopolitical arena around the world, all these tensions and the strife and 9/11
And the wars that
the
took
wars.
place.
And I think there's an erosion of hope, or an erosion of confidence,
Yeah.
and an anxiety about life and
Right.
your
Yeah.
future.
It's very sad, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think that with your question and then with your example, what I do is, in my work, I always teach people to look at the bottommost layer of something, the foundation, to where you can't go any deeper. So if I'm teaching, whoever, cops or single parents or executives, whoever, the target doesn't matter. Then I'm teaching them to look at a problem or an idea or an opportunity at the lowest level, because when you get to lowest level, you can find the universal algorithm or rule or principle, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter, and apply that in different landscapes. So going back to your question, I think it's an issue of, it doesn't matter with the religion, the system. Anytime you have a system, what matters is that the system is well designed, of course, but it also more so matters on where you put that system. So for example, with your specific question, with religion, you can create the best religion in the world, and that can be like, wow, we don't have anything else to do because it's perfect.
In theory.
However, once you apply it to this group of species, in this case humans, of course, it can be completely different. And making a religious parable, that's like the Bible. In religion, people say that God made, the perfect paradise, the perfect land, the perfect atmosphere, but the human was flawed. So that's another example of what we're talking about here. The system was perfect, but it depends on the target that you apply that system to. And then going back to Mr. Dolan's example, I think that it's a very similar thing, that I'm going to loosely use the word system or algorithm or thought or whatever psychological concept of love conquering all. Yeah, it met 100%, receptivity or acceptance to X amount of people over X amount of years, because those people belong to a certain population that believed something. But now we have a new class of people coming up in the last few years recently, and they are of a different mindset, background, variable, whatever, and that system doesn't work as well on them.
And the environment has changed.
Of course, yeah, the environment. So you have all these variables. So you have this one, again, I'm going to loosely use the word system or algorithm for love conquers all, and it's applied here 100%, applied here 100%. But now you change the variables in this other system, such as these new population of people, these new demographics, then you have a completely different output. And that's the same with in my work I also use systems theory, complex systems, dynamic systems, and all this stuff. Anytime you have a system and you apply it on a certain target, you change certain variables, even minutely, and it's going to have a completely different output.
That's, I think, a very interesting perspective. And I think if you take if you replace love with the religion, it's the same thing then.
Yes, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
So love is as an idea, as an ideal. Same thing here.
Yes.
If you take the ideal and then you start applying it to a specific group of people,
exactly.
then things change.
The variable or the algorithm, religion, love, whatever, you can change it out with whatever. That doesn't matter. What matters is the universal foundation or rule or algorithm or concept of when you take that system, love or the environment or whatever, and apply it to here, 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 it's always going to work so far, but then it's always going to change when you introduce it to a new demographic.
Yeah, that actually resonates with me. And as a Muslim and Islam now being very controversial, some people say it's the religion of peace, others say it's the religion of non-peace.
Yeah, right.
But sometimes I think, for example, you can compare between two very well-known figures. For example, let's say Bin Laden, right? No one doesn't know Bin Laden. But in the American culture, Muhammad Ali, the boxer that everyone loves, and he's a Muslim, right? How could both of them say we're Muslim? Both of them say we follow the Quran. Both of them say we follow Prophet Muhammad, right?
Yeah.
They follow the same system. They follow the same system of beliefs, right?
Yes, yeah.
How could it? Sometimes it's surprising. How could two people look at the same belief system and come up with completely opposite? It's not even slightly
Yes,
different.
yeah.
Completely opposite ways of life, right? Someone who uses find something in the religion that tells them it's okay to kill people, it's okay to anyone who doesn't follow my way
Yeah.
needs to go.
Yeah.
And someone else who looks at the same book and they find messages of peace, messages of spirituality, and that's a very tough. Well, what can you do with this? Like, if you have the system and the system or the belief system has something good in it, but still, people will differ, in the way that they handle this.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's any solution to that.
Well, I guess I would refocus on the idea that the milieu that people are in now is different from, at least they perceive it differently from what our mothers and fathers were in, perhaps.
Yes.
Or what we were in 30 years ago. And there are stresses now. Some are the same, of course, raising a family and making a living, but some are different, or they're magnified differently. Like the terrible weapons we have today.
Yeah.
Countries have. I remember when I was a youngster and World War II started, and we could follow the news of what was happening, but I think we were all very aware that we were relatively safe here,
Yeah.
Far from where
the
war,
two
right,
oceans
yeah, right.
kept our enemies far from our shores.
Yeah.
We hoped and we thought. Now, if there were the imminent prospect of war, I don't think we would feel that way.
Yeah.
Because we know that death and destruction can reach us from anywhere in the globe. So some things are the same, some things are quite different, I think. And again, with the economic prospects that young people, their perception might be quite a bit different from what ours were. I think, for example, my growing up, I sort of assumed I would make a living after college, and a decent living, and I thought I could become relatively moderately prosperous, like my parents. Now I see younger people with the tremendous amount of debt that they're accumulating for education, and I'm thinking their concept of their future
It's different.
possibilities is perhaps quite a bit different from what we had.
Yeah, and that leads me, what you're saying leads me to think that it's a human problem, it's not a religion problem.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
Exactly.
It depends on, going back to your question and your example, it doesn't matter what system you have, because in this case the target of course is humans, and humans are the ones that mess it up. So going back to your question on Bin Laden versus Muhammad Ali, it's the same system, but you have something in psychology called your self-schema. So your self-schema consists of your how you see the world. So it's based on your experience, your education, and your skill set, basically, your personal circles too. So your schema is going to make you see Islam in the way that you want to see it, and mine is going to make me see Islam, if we were all Muslims here, in the way that I want to see it, and yours, of course, yours. So the problem is not introducing a system that's going to be, I'm going to say, universal and can affect everyone. Yeah, that's going to help, of course, but the root problem, going back to what I teach with people and what I consult with, it's not the system itself, it's the target. So the better thing to do would be to look at humans and attack the issues within humanity, and psychologically, economically, and socially, the issues that make humans see things in different ways. And this is, I hate to say this, but it's probably impossible to do, but if there was a way to unify people and get them to be at least more unified, if not 100%, because that's probably impossible, then introduce that system on top of it, and you're going to see a tremendous change. Very similar to what you said about you growing up and thinking that you'll be prosperous, and now these students having debt, they're thinking totally different. And back in World War II, thinking that, oh, we were safe because of the two oceans. Now we're probably not going to be safe if there's war, because the enemy has infiltrated US and things can happen in the US. So it's all built on our perception. So this generation that thinks we're not safe in a war is surrounded by their education, their experiences, and their skills, their self-schema in a different time. So they're going to see this category, this algorithm, or this variable called war in a totally different way than people such as in Mr. Dolan's time that had a different education, background, and experiences. So they're going to see that categorization or variable, war, in a totally different way. And it's the same thing with religion, of course.
I think that's a very powerful revelation, if I may say, because initially I think at the beginning of our conversation we were focused on the system, but now the conversation led us to the target. So instead of focusing on the system, whether it's love or whether it's a specific religion, focus on the issues with the target. It's with humans.
Yeah.
So try to work on that target, and if that target gets fixed, then their perception of the system will be fixed, right? Their perception of love or their perception of any specific religion will change.
Yes.
I think that's a very useful takeaway.
It's very similar to a lot of different things. So for example, I said in the beginning I used two tools. I used psychological strategy and the system of interconnectivity, and I have been very lucky in realizing that a lot of things that surround us are actually tied and interconnected together. And going back to what you just said right now about that being a certain revelation, you can look at other things in life and see the interconnectivity. So for example, we're now saying the issue needs to be applied towards the target and not the system, and I very firmly believe that. So then that goes back to different parables and spiritual principles of, if you want to change the world, first change yourself. So you want to change, in this case, the target would be me. If I want to change the world, I want to change myself first. And that rule still applies to grander scales, such as a global population. Don't change the system first. Change yourself within the system, within the global population. Then you could
be that change that you want to see in the world.
Yeah, exactly. That's another principle too that's popular.
Yeah. I think that's a very, very, again, useful conclusion. Thank you so much for your time. And if you don't mind, maybe we can continue the conversation, and maybe we can talk about how to change the target.
Of course.
And that's an even harder discussion.
It is, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.